Hey Lanier, this is Drew Lassen presenting my final 408 mix portfolio. The song here is by the Dani Paige Band, and here's a quick sample of it. Yep, so first starting out with the drums, got the sub kick here, as always. Took out a little bit of the low end with a high pass filter in order to get rid of that really boomy low frequencies. Took out the high end because there's nothing important there. And then moving over to the kick, I don't know why that's there. Then used the Renaissance EQ. Took out the low end, shelved a little bit more of the low end to give room for the sub kick. Took out 670 hertz because I found that it was annoying frequency, very cardboard thin, didn't sound good in the kick drum. Then I boosted around 6.5K to give it a nice crisp attack. Then I compressed it with an 1176. As you can see, it didn't drive too much of it in. Set a really quick attack to maintain that clickiness and set the release a little bit below 5, so pretty quick release again, and set the ratio to 8:1. Then onto the snare drum, set a pretty large high pass filter in order to get rid of the bleed that came from the kick drum, because when that's there is really boomy and really lost definition in the kick drum. Took out around 225 hertz as well as 351 hertz. This frequency was really ringy and just didn't sound good, and this one was sounded like cardboard, didn't sound good, and so I took both of those out, but the frequencies in between, were crucial to the snare drum sound, so left those in. Then I boosted around 2K to give it that crisp attack sound, and then for the compression, I relatively fast attack, but when it was all the way there, it kind of took off a little bit of the initial transient and set a quick release and set the ratio to 8:1. And then for the snare bottom, I don't know why can't remember why I put those there. But all I did here was apply a high pass filter to get rid of that kick sound and to get rid of the really low unnecessary end. There's no really good low end content for snare bottom. And then compress this one as well, a little bit more than this the snare top. Same attack and release settings as well as ratio setting. And then for the high tone, took out everywhere where he wasn't playing the high tone, or else it just didn't sound very good. So what I did here was I applied a high pass filter, boosted the low end to, really add a lot of low end. Took out the mid-range frequencies because they just didn't sound good, and boosted a little bit of the high end to give it a nice attack. And for compression, fast attack, relatively fast release, backed off a little bit on there and set it to 8:1. Compressed this drum kit in terms of the ratio a lot more than I usually do. And for the low tom, boosted the low end a lot more, took out the mid-range frequencies and boosted the high end, and same compression settings for the low tom. And then for the overheads, took out all the low end, and there was the high end, for whatever reason, didn't sound that good, so I attenuated it a little bit and did the same thing for the overhead right channel. Panned them, of course, left and right. Then I applied some parallel compression to the overheads. As you can see, I used the all-in feature for the 1176 to give it that really explosive sound. As you can see, it likes to clip, and it kind of sounds cool. Relatively fast release. I backed up, fast attack, backed up on the release on this. Applied the same settings to the other overhead and panned those, of course, left and right. Then for the room sound, I took out the low end and boosted a little bit in the higher end and used the same compression settings. Very aggressive sound. And then for the bass, since it was just going DI, Took out the low end, shelved it a little bit because it kind of competed with the sub kick sound. Boosted a little bit more of the mid range and took out, a little around 3.5. Then I applied a Sans amp and went for the in your face bass setting, just a lot of bass, a decent amount of highs and drive since he slaps his bass in this song to give it, a really aggressive sound. Then I applied this CLA bass plugin. Didn't want any of the sub, not too much of the distortion. Kind of did this chorus spreader fader, which kind of sounded cool. I compressed it a decent amount, especially since he's slapping, and I think slap bass sounds cool when you compress it. Boosted the treble to give it more presence and attenuated a little bit of the bass just because it kind of became overwhelming with those two plugins. Then for the guitar, you can see here I applied a low pass filter, high pass filter, and it was really muddy and there was a lot of low end, and not a lot of presence at all in the guitar. And so I boosted that, took out the high end to give room for the vocals to really shine as well as the cymbals. Then I applied a 11-76 plugin, as you can see here. And here's what I mean. For the guitar by itself, really didn't sound so great. I remember we applied a 57 and an E22 when we put him he had two cones on his speaker or his cab, and we put them in the exact same spot, and it was kind of interesting because I was going through them, and it was extremely hard to tell the difference between the 57 and the E22, which is just interesting because they're two totally different type of microphones. So I decided to get rid of one because there's really no point in keeping it since it wasn't, providing anything extra. Here's what it sounds like unaffected. So a lot of low muddy end. So I didn't think it sounded so great even after I EQ'd and compressed it, but it's the best I could do with what I had to work with. Yep, and next up is the vocals. For this one, I applied a de-esser, taking around almost 5.5K, because just annoying frequency when it popped up. And then applied a high pass filter, shelved a little bit of the low end. Around 400 hertz was pretty boomy, so I took that out. Boosted a little bit around 2K to give it some presence in the mix, and then this is this annoying frequency, so I attenuated that and I boosted more in the high end to give it some shine. Then I slightly compressed it, even though it's at a 12:1 ratio setting. It just wasn't hitting the compressor that hard, so it wasn't really doing that much, because as you can see I parallel compressed it. And I applied a PSP Easy Verb reverb plugin, set it to a plate algorithm, which I thought sounded pretty cool. And as you can see here, I parallel compress it with all the same settings, except really made it hit the compressor a lot harder. So here's what the vocals sound like when they were just by themselves.
I can take much more standing in line.
And with everything else.
I can take much more standing in line. You work so hard to work me over, fuck my pride.
Yep. Sounds like a lot of reverb, but in context it sounds appropriate. Then as you can see, I had a separate drum reverb. Well, actually I used it for everything. My bad. And then I applied that for the snares, the toms, especially the toms because they get cut off because I was taking out everywhere he didn't play. And although I let it ring, I just gave it some reverb, so I had a little bit of extra room to decay in a sense. and then apply just a little bit of reverb to the overheads. Yep. And put some reverb for the guitar track because it was super dry. And yeah, that's all for this mix.